Good evening, everyone, and welcome to 30 minutes of Torah study for the Torah portion of Vayeshev. So the typical work week is 5 days, followed by the weekend. When do people start thinking about the weekend? I think on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every day of the week, people have their eye on the weekend. And then the weekend happens. It's fun, it's wonderful, it's entertaining, it's relaxing, pleasurable. And then the weekend is over and you're back at work like the weekend never happened. And you start once again thinking about the next weekend. Now, Jews operate slightly differently because we don't have the 5-weekday week. We operate on a 6-day week, and then comes Shabbos. Now, when is it appropriate to start thinking about Shabbos? Should we be thinking about Shabbos on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Then we experience the holiness, the spirituality, the beauty of Shabbos. Are we then supposed to forget about it like it never happened and begin the cycle again? Let's look at this week's Torah portion for some insight and some meaning. So in the Torah portion, Yosef is kidnapped by his brothers, and ultimately he is sold as a slave down to Egypt. After selling their brothers as a slave, Yehuda, who was a leader amongst all the brothers, they recognize it was a poor choice. It was in fact wrong. So Yehuda steps away from his brothers. He no longer serves that function of a leadership role. He gets married, and he has 3 children. The Torah tells us his oldest son, marries a woman named Tamar, but he does not live long. He passes away. Then, according to the principle of Levirate marriages, Tamar marries the next son, whose name is Onan. He too passes away young, and Tamar is supposed to be designated to marry the youngest son, Shelah. However, Yehuda is not so excited about the prospect of this marriage taking place. 2 of his sons lost their life, perhaps as a result of being married to Tamar, but for sure it was a fact that they were married to Tamar. So he sends her back to her father's home. He says, wait there, Shelah's young. When he grows older, then we will revisit the whole shidduch. Years go by. It's very clear that the Yehuda is not bringing his son Shelah to Tamar. Turns out Yehuda is going on business to the area, so Tamar comes up with a plan. Many days passed, and Shua's daughter, Yehuda's wife, died. Yehuda was consoled, and he, Chira, his Adulamite friend, went up to Yehuda's sheep shearers to Timnah, and was told to Tamar, saying, behold, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep. So she took off her widow garb, covered herself with a veil, wrapped herself, and sat down at the crossroads that were on the way to Timnah, for she saw that Shelah had grown up, but as for her, she was not given to him for a wife. When Yehuda saw her, he thought her a prostitute, because she had covered her face. He turned aside toward her to the road and said, come now, I will come to you. For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, what will you give me that you should come to me? And he said, I will send a kid from the herd. She said, only if you give me a collateral until you send it. This leads to huge questions. First of all, what on earth was Yehuda thinking? Did a man of his moral caliber truly intend to lie with the prostitute? Is this supposed to be normal behavior for a respected biblical figure to solicit a prostitute at the corner? How exactly are we meant to understand the story? So let's continue the story. So he said, what is the collateral that I should give you? And she said, your seal, your cloak, and the staff that is in your hand. So he gave them to her, and he came to her, and she conceived from him. So Tamar asks for collateral. What does she ask for? She wants his seal. What exactly is the seal? The seal is a ring, right? It is a signet ring with which he could be identified by. Now look at what Tosfos says about the significance of the ring. Some explain that their union was consecrated in marriage. This explains Tamar's wording, "What will you give me that you should come to me?" As if to say, "With what will you betroth me?" To which Yehuda responded by saying, "I will send a kid." She then said, "Only if you give a pledge, your seal, your cloak, etc." This means that the ring that you use as a seal, so that he betrothed her with a ring. So Tosfos explains that Jewish tradition tells us what is taking place over here. This is not simply a solicitation of a prostitute on a street corner, but in fact, there is a marriage taking place, and the Talmud actually records a conversation between Yehuda and Tamar that very, very much sounds like a conversation that ultimately is leading to marriage. This is the significance of the ring, specifically a ring, because this was a betrothal, this was a marriage taking place. And in fact, some even see Yehuda and Tamar's marriage as the source for the contemporary custom to seal a wedding exclusively by giving a ring. So the tradition that in every single Jewish wedding, the way that a marriage takes place is through the giving of a ring, even though it could take place in many other ways, where does it come from? It actually comes from this story, Yehuda and Tamar. It was not a simple solicitation of a prostitute. Rather, there was a betrothal, there was a marriage taking place that was facilitated through a ring. Therefore, our marriages today are also solidified through a ring. But here too we have some questions. Question number one, why would Tamar insist on using a ring for a marriage when this had never been done before in history, right? This is the first incident where we have a ring being utilized for marriage. And question number two, why is this story the source for a wedding ring? What is it about this particular story that is relevant for every future marriage that will take place, that this becomes the source for the tradition? So we shall see as we continue on in the class that the ring plays a very, very important role. It's very significant in uniting two halves of one's soul in marriage, which is also a reflection of the fact that we have to unite two important parts of our life. There's our weekday self, and there's a Shabbos self. And we have to merge, we have to unite, we have to connect them as well, as we shall see as the class unfolds. So Tamar did not ask Yehuda for a ring. She said, "I want your seal." The seal is a ring, but she asked specifically for his seal. Why? Like, what is the significance of the seal beyond just the fact that it's something that Yehuda can be identified with? But before we answer the question, we need to take a step back. We need to zoom way, way out and look at this story from the perspective of Jewish history. This union of Yehuda and Tamar produced children. The direct descendant of this union of Yehuda and Tamar is King David, whose direct descendant is Mashiach. What is this telling us here? This is telling us that this story is not just a story that took place between two individuals, Yehuda and Tamar. We're talking about biblical figures. All of the events that took place in the lives of biblical figures have cosmic significance. The story of Yehuda and Tamar is the story of the creation, the production of Mashiach itself. Therefore, we have to look at this story with completely different eyes, with completely different glasses, through a completely different lens. You can sense that Yehuda feels this with the name that he chooses for the son, for one of the sons that's born, which is the name Peretz, which means burst forth. Let's look at what the Medrash Lekach Peiv says. And she said, "How you have burst forth, making a breach for yourself. This is King Mashiach. A Mahuvid is written, the disruptor has gone before them. Their king passed before them, and God was at their head." The prophet Micha refers to Mashiach as Peretz. the very name given to the child born from the union of Yehuda and Tamar. Because what does Peretz mean? Peretz is a disruptor. And what is Mashiach? Mashiach is the ultimate disruptor. During the time of exile, what is the question that everyone asks? Why do the wicked prosper and the righteous suffer? Comes along Mashiach and he disrupts the way that the world functions at this time. The wicked will perish, the righteous will rejoice. The world is going to be transformed. There will no longer be anger, jealousy, death, sickness, evil. Mashiach represents the ultimate disruptor. So we see that this relationship between Tamar and Yehuda is not a casual, meaningless solicitation of a prostitute at all. This is simply the making of something powerful, cosmic, relevant to the entire history of the world. This is a story about the making of Mashiach. So what really went on that night? To answer this question, we have to turn to Kabbalah, and we can see from the story that there is no way that we can understand certain elements within Torah, especially this story in Torah, without looking at Kabbalah. Kabbalah teaches that there are two different manifestations, two different expressions of divine energy. There is one element of divine energy which is invested in the world. It's the life force and energy of the world that perhaps we could describe as the world running according to nature. In Kabbalistic terminology, this is called Malchus. God, as he is invested in the world and appears within nature, is called Malchus, and this is considered to be feminine spiritual energy. Of this world that is feminine, that is called Malchus. However, there's another expression and manifestation of divine energy that is not of this world. It's otherworldly, it's spiritual, it's godly, it's miraculous, it's beyond nature. And that is called Zah, right? That's an abbreviation for Zer, but that is called Zah, right? Zah has masculine energy. So we have two different divine energies, Malchus and Zah. Malchus represents nature and is of this world. Zah represents the supernatural and is not of this world. What is our mission? What is our purpose in creation? Is to unite the two, to merge them, to bring the supernatural divine perspective into the physical world. In Kabbalistic terminology, this is to unite Zah and Malchus. In gendered terminology, this is to merge and to unite the masculine and the feminine. Now, everything in the physical world that we have comes from as an extension of the spiritual world. So how do we see the union of Malchus and Zah in our physical world? It's very simple. It's the union of the feminine and the masculine. When a man and woman unite in intimacy, this is the physical manifestation of the divine energies of Zah and Malchus uniting with each other. This is how the sixth Rebbe describes it. A groom is called a king. As we see in Medrash Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, a groom resembles a king, and a bride is called a queen, and the sphere of Malchus is called a queen. The Zohar states a king without a queen is not a king, nor is he great. There is meant to be a union of masculine and feminine, as it is written, male and female he created them, and God blessed them. For a groom and a bride take the form of the spheres of Zah and Malchus. What this is telling us is that when a man and woman unites, it's simply not just an intimate union between two human beings. Rather, it is a physical manifestation of something so holy, so powerful, so spiritual, so profound. It is the union of the divine energies of Zah and Malchus. Because of that fact, that it's a union of Zah and Malchus, there is the ability to give birth to children. When a man and woman unite, a godly energy which is beyond nature is drawn into nature. This is the perfect representation of what is accomplished by pairing the energies of Zah and Malchus. This helps us understand what's taking place with Yehuda and Tamar. Not just a casual solicitation. This is the union of Zah and Malchus. This is the union of divine energy that is beyond nature, within nature, to produce ultimately Mashiach, which is going to rectify the breach between nature and the supernatural. So it's this union that set forth the whole process of the purpose for which the world was created, which is to unify and connect the supernatural within the natural as well. This is why, right, the ring was chosen to solidify a marriage. Because what does the ring represent? A ring is a circle. A ring represents the circle of life, the natural cycle of life. In Hebrew, the word for ring is tabas. The root of the word tabas is teva, which means nature. The ring signifies nature. What is the seal which is on the ring? What is the signet which is on the ring? That represents truth. That is the identifying marker of truth. And look what the Talmud says. Rabbi Chanina said, the seal of the Holy One, blessed be He, is truth. So while the ring represents nature and the natural order, what does the signet ring represent? The seal represents the transcendent, the supernatural, the divine, and the godly. So what does a signet ring represent? What does a ring with a seal represent? That represents the perfect fusion, the perfect unity, the perfect merging of that which is beyond nature and nature itself. So it's this union of Yehuda and Tamar that kicked off this process of which all of our lives' energy are dedicated to, which is merging the natural and the supernatural in the world. With this in mind, we are going to go to a fascinating medrash. The medrash says, Rabbi Shela said to Rabbi Yishmael bar Yossi, have you heard from your father what on the seventh day God finished means? Geneva and the rabbis discussed the matter. Geneva said, the analogy is a king who makes a wedding canopy, who makes a wedding canopy, decorations, and a beautiful paneling. What is still missing? A bride to enter into it. In this way, what was the world still missing? Shabbos. The rabbi said the analogy is a king who formed a ring. What was it missing? A seal. In this way, what was the world missing? Shabbos. So this medrash asks a fabulous question. What was created on Shabbos? We say God created the world in 7 days. That's not true. He created the world in 6 days and he rested on Shabbos. Why do we say God created the world in 7 days? So the answer is, what was created on the seventh day? Shabbos. Shabbos is not just the lack of work. Shabbos is not passive. The rest of Shabbos is actually an active rest. How are we meant to understand that the rest of Shabbos is an active rest? Two analogies are given to us in this medrash. We will focus on the second one first, and then we will conclude with the first one. So the medrash says that the seal of God is Shabbos. Why? Why is the seal of God Shabbos? Because Shabbos interrupts the natural cycle of the week. The week is mundane. The week is ordinary. The week represents nature. On Shabbos, we take a step back and we realize and recognize that the world was created for a purpose. There is a God in this world. Spirituality, holiness, we spend time with our family. We focus on that which is the most important. Extra time for Torah study, extra time for prayer, extra time for connecting with the family. This is what Shabbos is all about, right? Shabbos is able to allow us to take a step back and realize what's purposeful, what's meaningful, what's true in life. This is how the Sefer HaChinuch explains. The Sefer HaChinuch explains that Shabbos is meant to serve as a reminder that the mundane world isn't as mundane as it seems. The message of this mitzvah, behaving in this way of rest on Shabbos, is meant to awaken an awareness of the greatness of the day and instill in our hearts a belief in the creation of the world, for in 6 days God made, etc. By resting on the seventh day, we remember the creation of the world, for when we sit back down on Sunday and people ask us, what inspired you to rest? The answer will be that in 6 days, God made, etc., and this will strengthen one's true faith. The Chinuch is telling us something very simple about the nature of Shabbos. Shabbos is not meant to be an escape from reality, a vacation in time. Shabbos, the purpose of Shabbos is to directly impact your Sunday, your Monday, and your Tuesday. Shabbos reminds us that the physical world, nature, ordinary, the mundane, is not in fact in reality ordinary and mundane, but is created by God and therefore infused with spirituality, holy, and purpose. And what is our job on Shabbos? It is to connect the transcendent holiness, the supernatural holiness of God with the weekday. Shabbos is not separate from the weekday. Shabbos is absolutely connected to the weekday. On Shabbos, we're able to tap into that supernatural. On Shabbos, we are raised from the world of Malchus to the level of Zah. We're able to look at the world from a divine and holy perspective. And this is exactly what a ring is about, right? The ring has a seal on it. The seal is not something separate than the ring. The seal is part and parcel of the ring. The seal, which represents something truth, higher, Zah. The ring, which represents the ordinary, the mundane, nature, Malchus, right? What does this remind us? Just as the seal is connected to the ring, we have to remember that Shabbos is connected to the week. And we have to bring the holiness of Shabbos into our week. Now let's go back to the first analogy. The first analogy said, what is Shabbos like? It says, imagine, right, that the world is like a chuppah, all ready to go. And what is Shabbos? Shabbos represents the bride, right? Shabbos represents the very purpose of there being a chuppah, the very purpose of there being a world to begin with. And this is a very common theme on Shabbos, referring to Shabbos as the bride. We have the famous Lecha Dodi prayer that we recite on Friday night in Shul. Come, my beloved, to greet the bride, the countenance of Shabbos we shall receive. The world, right, without the perspective of Shabbos, living a life without experiencing Shabbos, without being able to look at the world through the lens and the perspective of the holiness of Shabbos, would be like an empty chuppah. An empty chuppah, pointless, purposeless, meaningless. What is Shabbos? Shabbos is bringing the bride to the chuppah. Shabbos is injecting purpose and meaning into life. Shabbos must impact the week. Just as the signet, the seal, is part of the ring, so too Shabbos is part of the 6 days and must impact it deeply. The Rebbe writes, a seal is not its own independent entity, rather a component of the ring. Thus, with Yehuda, for example, the seal simply proved that the ring belonged to Yehuda. So it is with Shabbos and all miraculous things. It is not something separate from the 6 days of creation. Rather, it is the 7th day of the 6 days. It brings completion to the world. In the words of our sages, what was the world missing? Shabbos. This means that the perfection of nature itself is achieved by drawing the supernatural into it. So this means, should we be thinking about Shabbos on Sunday and Monday and Tuesday? Absolutely. If we do Shabbos properly, Shabbos is going to flow over and inspire and motivate your Sundays, your Mondays, your Tuesdays in a completely transformative way. So this gives us some insight and explanation into the story of Yehuda and Tamar. Not casual, not a solicitation. This is all about the making of Mashiach, setting the stage for the purpose of creation, uniting the supernatural and the natural, which is Malchus and Zah, which ultimately is the feminine and the masculine. And from this story, we learn that how do you get married? You get married with a ring. Because what is the ring meant to remind you? The ring is meant to remind you that in life, you have the natural, the ordinary, the mundane. It's not exciting. It's kind of everyday life. But then at a wedding, there's this supernatural joy, happiness, excitement, right? It's critical that just as the signet ring combines and connects the supernatural and the natural, so too, when we get married, we have to remember that what are we doing? We're not doing something just ordinary and regular. We are bringing together the supernatural and into the natural. we're doing something holy, we're doing something godly, we're doing something beautiful. And as long as we look at that ring and it reminds us that a ring is a wedding and a marriage, it represents the merging of the supernatural and the natural, that will make sure that our marriage is filled with meaning, and that our marriage is filled with purpose, and that our marriage will continue to be passionate year in and year out. And this, of course, again reminds us of Shabbos, that the point of Shabbos is to connect the weekday with the Shabbos. Right? So I hope this gives you a little bit of an insight into what Kabbalah brings to our study of the Torah, and hopefully transforms your marriages, and of course transforms Shabbos and your weekday. Now, a little update about next week's class. Next week's class on Thursday during Hanukkah is going to be live. I would like everyone to come in person to the class, not over Zoom, not watching it from a distance, but I want us to get together on Hanukkah, and we're going to have donuts. I'm going to be grabbing some donuts from the deli on Crown. They have a very interesting beef bacon, perhaps savory type of interesting donut. We're going to have some regular donuts. So let's do this Thursday, 7:30 next week at the shul in person. We'll learn together. We'll have some donuts. We'll have a nice little Hanukkah party. Thank you so much for joining. Have a fabulous night, everyone. A good Shabbos and a wonderful Hanukkah.